Okay, hi guys. So if you've been watching my daily vlogs, you know that I am having some problems with a school at the moment that is not complying with my son's EHCP. I've been studying neurodiversity for the last 6 years. I'm currently doing a degree in SEN and inclusive practice. And so I've kind of picked up some tricks as a parent, but also as a professional working in the environment. So if you have a child with special educational needs and you are thinking about an EHCP, or you have an EHCP that's maybe not being followed, or you're in the thick of it, this video is for you. So let's break this down into 3 main sections. So the first is the needs of the child. Ultimately, a lot of the people that are around you at this moment in time when you're trying to create an EHCP don't know your child as well as you. The school might discourage you from applying. I've seen that happen quite a few times. You don't have to believe that. If you think that it's going to help your child thrive at school rather than just surviving or coping, you can apply yourself as the parent. So trust your instincts. If you think that your child really needs an EHCP, just go for it. The purpose of the EHCP is if the general SEN support in the school is not helping that child to thrive, then an EHCP is required. You know, especially for those with ADHD, if they are getting excluded or constantly disciplined for something that is a need, you can get that EHCP, which is going to support them in getting the right provision. It's not just for specialist schools. You can get an EHCP and stay in a mainstream school if that's what you and your child wish. It's just about getting the right support for them. So you will be asked to write your views down about why you think an EHCP is important and what their needs look like. I would seriously recommend being extremely detailed in this section. Don't leave anything out. If it takes you a couple of weeks to write it, that's absolutely fine. It's better to get all the information down, all of their needs, rather than to miss something and them then not include it in the EHCP. So what I did is I broke it down into the sections which are already there. So cognition and learning, social emotional, and I broke it down and I said, right, in terms of learning, what do I think my child's needs are? And so I wrote down absolutely everything I could think of. I watched my children for a couple of weeks, and every time I spotted something that was within that heading, I would quickly jot it down. And so that's then what was sent to them, and ensured that no matter what, we were going to get an assessment, because there was so much detail there. They couldn't deny that my son's needs were high and needed an EHCP. You know your child's needs, you know they need an EHCP, you've written down absolutely everything you can think of, and that will be the first part of the EHCP. The second section is setting goals for the future. Now, they call them outcomes, but ultimately it's talking about goals. Now, these goals aren't saying your child has to achieve them in order to be successful. It's about supporting them in order to grow. Be very mindful of this section, because sometimes there can be a lot of ableism in there. And what I mean by ableism is looking at things from a neurotypical view rather than a neurodivergent view, or a non-disabled view to a disabled view. You know, things like forcing eye contact, forcing different skills that just are never going to be suitable for that child is ableism. So one in particular that I made sure was on my son's EHCP was a positive view of his autism and an understanding of his sensory needs, because for me that was really important, that he could improve his mental health through a better understanding of who he is and what makes him him. It also then ensures that schools are talking positively about these things, which is beneficial not just for him, but for the whole school. Thinking about outcomes, you may want to put down the main needs and then look at what you would hope for in the future. So, for example, if they face a lot of emotional dysregulation, you might say that in the future you want them to be more emotionally regulated. You know, we're never going to be perfect. Everybody gets emotionally dysregulated. We are human, but you want to be quite specific about it, and they will help you with this. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of like SMART goals, where you have like it's measurable, it's attainable, you know, and so you might say able to emotionally regulate for 70% of the day, and that could be an outcome. Or if it's easier for them, you might say 4 out of 5 days they're emotionally regulated. It just depends on your child's needs as to how that outcome is going to look. But that's the kind of thing that you will see in the outcome section. And you just want to make sure that they're focused on the needs of your child and not ableist. Okay, so the third one, and I feel like this is such like the hardest one because we know our children, we know their needs. We are hopeful for the future. We want them to see growth in everything that they do. The real difficulty is keeping the schools and the local authority accountable for those things. So you will have to be extremely careful about the wording of the document. So for instance, if you feel that your child needs a one-to-one constantly in order to keep them safe or in order for them to thrive, it will need to say one-to-one at all times. If it says one-to-one for learning or one-to-one at unstructured times, that can be manipulated to essentially the point where the school can say, well, they had a one-to-one at the teacher input, or they had a one-to-one whilst they were learning, but actually that one-to-one is shared with 5 other children in the classroom and, their time is spent on other things. It might not be suitable for your child to have a one-to-one. And we do have to be mindful that we understand it's the real world, and we need to be mindful that, not everything is attainable within the education system. But if you genuinely believe that your child needs a one-to-one, Woody, my youngest, needs a one-to-one at all times in order to keep him safe, in order to keep everyone else safe. It is what it is. He has to have it in order to be safe. So be careful of like vague terms that might be able to be manipulated by the school or by the local authority to reduce funding for your child or to reduce their provision. One thing that I'm really grateful for that is in my son's EHCP is that it specifies he needs a play-based and practical curriculum. That's his whole curriculum, not just some of it, not just access to it sometimes, all the time. The local authority quite often are looking to save money, and so they are not going to give you the more expensive option unless it's really, really necessary, and it's unfortunately left to us to prove that necessity. So we will be looking at making sure the EHCP includes the utmost best possible provision we can include in an EHCP for our child to make sure that they thrive. This is a little bit controversial, but I'm going to be really honest with you. Schools will claim that they can meet your child's needs when they really can't. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to my children. They've said they can meet needs and then haven't. And I've seen it happen working in the education system. Unfortunately, schools know that money is tied to these EHCPs, and so they quite often enjoy being able to bring in a child that is offering extra money to the school. One instance, whilst I was looking for a specialist provision, we did a visit and the school was saying, yep, we can meet needs, easy. Yeah, not a problem. And when I went for the visit at the school, there was no designated sensory space. And this is for a child with high sensory needs. It is clearly on his EHCP that he needs access to a sensory space. Yet they were happy to say they could meet needs without having a sensory space. And sometimes they are right. I had an instance where actually to do with sensory needs is I said I wanted sensory occupational therapy to assess my son. Well, they genuinely can't do that through the EHCP. It has to be a school that makes a referral and then you get an assessment. So it couldn't be in the EHCP without that assessment having already happened. So there are things that they can't do and they are being genuine, but other things they will push and push and push in the hope that you'll back down. So don't be afraid to push a little bit harder, see if you can get it on that EHCP. And no matter what school you're looking at, go and visit, email them, talk to them, question them, ask them, it says this on his EHCP, how are you going to do that? The other thing to be mindful of, unfortunately, is that even if you get a provision with those things in place, they can pull the rug once you are in that school and you may have to change schools. So just be mindful that just because they could meet needs when you first joined, hold them accountable right through their education. It's hard, it's really hard, and I want you to know you're not alone in feeling like that, but that's why I'm doing this channel, that's why I'm here, because I want to support people. So if you're finding it hard or you're stressed, message me, talk to me, and I would happily give you as much advice, support and love I can. And finally, when it comes to provision, nothing's going to be perfect. And I've had to remind myself of that quite a lot. If I could put one of my sons in a gaming academy school that's where he'd be, because he would thrive, he would be loving life, but it doesn't really exist. Although I did find something the other day that did look quite interesting, so watch that space. But it's not always possible to have perfect, but it is possible to make sure that they've got as much as they possibly can within the systems. Thank you so much for watching this. I really hope it's been helpful. I am always at the end of a message on Instagram or TikTok, or you can email me. It'll all be in the description. So please get in touch or just comment below and I'll respond. Okay guys, see you soon.